North Korea began the new year as it ended the last firing a short-range ballistic missile into the East Sea on Sunday. This came as the ruling Workers' Party wrapped up a 6-day meeting to discuss policy goals for 2023, during which North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called for a quote-unquote exponential increase of the country's nuclear arsenal. In response, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered his military to punish further provocations with a, quote, mindset to not avoid going to war, end quote. This is where we start a special in-depth news analysis series this week, exploring what 2023 will bring across different sectors of the country. And to discuss what lies ahead for the situation on the Korean Peninsula today, we have joining us via video call Dr. Choi Kang, President of the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you for your time today, Dr. Choi, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm very happy to be with you today.
So let's start with those comments by Kim Jong-un. The North Korean leader vowed to increase the production of nuclear warheads exponentially in a key party meeting, which wrapped up on Saturday. According to the North's official Korean Central News Agency on Sunday, he also said that South Korea has become the North's undoubted enemy and highlighted the importance of mass-producing tactical nuclear weapons. Dr. Choi, what do you make of Kim's remarks and his push to produce more nuclear weapons? How significant were his comments?
Actually, nothing new. North Korea, from the beginning of Kim Jong-un era, has been pursuing that policy to produce the weapon-grade, the fissile material as much as it can. So actually, reconfirmation of our belief that North Korea is not going to give up nuclear weapons. But that's a basic line. The second line, they like to have more nuclear weapons to pressure both the United States and South Korea to be accepted as a nuclear power state. Maybe by having as much as nuclear fissile material, they can claim they are de facto the nuclear power state. That means they can have more nuclear weapons in various types with different ranges. So actually, from the mid of last year and all the way up to now, Kim Jong-un has been emphasizing the tactical nuclear weapons. Most of the weapons will be directed toward South Korea. So they like to have more tactical nuclear weapons that requires more fissile material, weapon-grade fissile material. So, and then maybe at the end of the day, they want to have a kinds of a arms control talks with the United States. If they believe they have, let's say, I have 100 nuclear weapons or maybe 200 nuclear weapons, what are you going to do? We have to meet in somewhere in the middle to freeze the further production of fissile material, and then go into this freeze mode, and then maybe that can be followed by some kinds of reduction. So actually, North Korea tried to create a kinds of upper hand atmosphere or position vis-a-vis both the United States as well as South Korea. So actually, this reconfirmation of Kim Jong-un's behavior and direction to be accepted as a nuclear power state by the international community.
Right, so even though they explicitly, openly said that they want to exponentially increase their nuclear stock of nuclear weapons, that doesn't really change anything because they had already been on that path, you're saying. Meanwhile, what do you make of Kim Jong-un naming South Korea, specifically our undoubted enemy? What's your take on his identification of South Korea as an enemy?
Actually, before I go into that question, so I like to say something, because actually Asan and Rand Corporation has conducted a study. By 2027, North Korea may have about more than 200 nuclear weapons. Actually, that was the expectation we had at that point of time. So Kim Jong-un's claim to produce more fissile material, we confirm our belief, our estimate. That's my first response. About this, this response to the President Yoon Suk-yeol's call for the dialogue, actually, they call this Yoon Suk-yeol administration as undoubted enemy. Actually, that's been the case. The statement made by Kim Yo-jong confirmed that actually they have no interest in having any kinds of dialogue, and that North Korea firmly believes South Korea is the kinds of enemy. But it's quite different. The enemy which will present a threat, direct threat to North Korea. But actually, South Korea does not have any intent to be hostile toward North Korea. If North Korea come to the negotiation table and eager to give up nuclear weapons and open up its system to outside the world, South Korea is in a position to help North Korea become a normal state. But actually, the reason why Kim Jong-un calls South Korea as undoubted enemy is that the existence of free and affluent or prosperous South Korea is a direct political threat to Kim Jong-un regime itself. And also the military, unlike the previous administration, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration has been very firm in responding back to any kinds of provocation made by North Korea. So they might call that our response or reaction to their own provocation as an act of hostility. That does not make any sense at all. But actually, but further down the road, that means North Korea has no interest in having any kind of dialogue with South Korea, and also South Korea is the one North Korea wants to eliminate on the Korean Peninsula. The actual reconfirmation, my personal belief, North Korea's ultimate goal is the unification under the communist flag.
On President Yoon's firmness, which you mentioned, in response on Sunday, President Yoon ordered military commanders to maintain a thorough readiness posture against North Korea and punish further provocations with a mindset to not avoid going to war. So in other words, do not let the fear of war hold them back, essentially. Yoon issued the directive in virtual talks with the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman and other top commanders, and this is a reiteration of sorts to similar comments he made during the end of last year as well. When he says to punish further provocations, what kind of punishment could he be referring to? How can South Korea punish such provocations?
But before answering your question, actually, the President Yoon Suk-yeol and Yoon Suk-yeol administration is pursuing the policy peace through strength. And also it is based on the belief that to avoid war, you should be ready to fight a war. So firm determination to fight a war actually is the best way to avoid war. And also clear message toward North Korea is the best way to prevent North Korea from taking any kinds of provocation. So let me go into what kinds of punishment. We have to think about two aspects of punishment. One is proportionality. So actually, 1-to-3 proportion response to the North Korea provocation. If North Korea send, let's say, one UAV, we can send 2 to 3 UAV. If there is a bomb shelling on our own territory, we can retaliate in the three times more we receive from North Korea. So it's proportionality is there. Second, maybe in maybe same kinds of provocation. So if they send us a UAV, we can send our UAV, and also we have to think about presenting a very clear signal to North Korea by conducting our own military exercise. For example, he has been doing the same. For example, if there's a North Korea's artillery live fire exercise, we did the same kinds of things in response. If they fire the missile, so we actually state our own missile test. So proportionality and kinds of things punishment. And further down the road, we have to think about strengthening the economic sanctions based upon our UN resolutions. So we can enforce sanctions, we can adopt more sanctions vis-a-vis North Korean entity and personnel. So that's the only way. The other way around is like, for example, we can raise international awareness of North Korea's provocation and strengthening the coalition among the like-minded countries and suppressing some countries like China and Russia on North Korean side to abide by international rules and norms and regulations we actually share together.
Dr. Chet, do you have any concerns about such comments or actions leading to perhaps a dangerous escalation in the situation?
Of course, there's a possibility of escalation, but actually, if you look at the North Korean behavior after the Korean War, if we were firm, North Korea tends to back down. If we show some weakness, North Korea tends to exploit that weakness and lack of resolve. So I think maybe if we are eager to send a very strong signal, I think the North Korea at the end of the day will back down. So of course there's always a danger of escalation, but that's a fact of life. But actually, to avoid escalation, we have to have kinds of what I call full spectrum of dominance, high level of military preparedness, and also the coalition and cooperation among the like-minded countries will help to control the situation on the ground, even though there is a provocation or exchange of fires or test some armed conflict. Of course, we cannot totally rule out the possibility, but actually firmness and resolve actually will lead to the resolution of the situation.
Looking ahead to the rest of this year, then, what's your outlook with regard to North Korea's provocations? We've already seen one short-range ballistic missile test, and the regime launched more missiles in 2022 than any year before, at one point launching 23 missiles in a single day. Do you
That's
expect
right.
this high volume of missile tests to continue this year and possibly seeing other provocations?
I think this maybe they will go the next level of missile test. So maybe the medium range, possibly the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile. So that's the case we can think of. But actually, on the other, we have to think about more conventional provocation North Korea can stage vis-a-vis South Korea. So, for example, violation of northern limit line, and also some kinds of armed clash, or maybe the live fire shooting across the NLL, or there could be a kinds of provocation along the military demarcation line. For example, we clearly remember what happened in 2015, the landmine incident. That kinds of provocation can create some kinds of fear among the South Koreans. That was one of the best way to create some kinds of split within South Korean society over the North Korea policy. So they will try to create more direct threat to South Korea in a conventional way as well as in a more asymmetrical way.
What about the long-mooted seventh nuclear test? The spectre of a seventh nuclear test loomed large through most of 2022, but it never came in the end. Why do you think Kim did not carry out such a test, and do you think it could be coming this year?
I think there's a high probability North Korea will stage the seventh nuclear test last year because the Xi Jinping was actually wanted to start his third term, so he did not want any kinds of crisis around this China's periphery. That it was regarded as one of the reasons why North Korea was refraining from staging nuclear tests. But this year, North Korea is free from that kind of political burden. That's the first thing. Second, maybe because there could be some kind of technical problem North Korea has not overcome yet. Because most experts expect the seventh nuclear test is going to be a test of a low-yield, more tactical nuclear explosive test rather than the huge one. So maybe we have not seen the tactical nuclear warhead yet. So they are working on it. If that's the case, I expect maybe the seventh nuclear test could be around maybe the middle of this year after the yes.
Some analysts have also said that the greatest fear is not another underground nuclear test, but an atmospheric nuclear test of a low yield that will unequivocally prove their nuclear weapons capabilities. What do you think are the chances of such a test, detonating a
Uh,
test warhead in the
I,
Pacific?
I don't think so, because actually we have been carefully monitoring this Punggye, the nuclear test site. They have been preparing the actual reconstructed the underground tunnel for the next nuclear test. I don't think they have any the means to do the atmosphere test in the Pacific Ocean. No, because actually unless they does it through the ballistic missile, I don't think that's the way North Korea can stage a nuclear test. Maybe I'm expecting the Punggye is going to be the site they are going to stage the seventh nuclear test. Maybe either number three or number two, the tunnel.
Okay. And what do you think then could the United States and South Korea and other parties do to try to prevent North Korea from carrying out provocations, including a nuclear test? What cards do they hold? And also, do you think there's any chance that the involved parties could come back to the negotiating table this year?
That's quite a tough question, actually. Actual coalition among the like-minded countries, Korea, US, and Japan, plus maybe we can ask China and Russia to be on our side in persuading North Korea not to stage a nuclear test coming back to negotiation. But actually, to make it that happen, we need to maintain very high level of military preparedness and show our resolve and capability to carry out what we say in public. And also, maybe we can continuously upgrade, extend deterrence of the United States vis-a-vis South Korea. So we can think of a more pre-warning toward North Korea. This is going to happen. What you stage nuclear test. That kind of clear warning could be very effective in preventing. Of course, North Korea can stage the seventh nuclear test this year, but actually to prevent such things from happening, we need to show our resolve and capability to North Korea. This is going to, you see, what you stage a nuclear test. What could be consequences North Korea will get after having a nuclear test?
Well, it seems a nervy year awaits in regards to the situation with North Korea. That is where we're going to leave it for today for our discussion. We've been speaking to Dr. Choi Kang, President of the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Chair, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.